Yes.
Okay, you're on with Rich Gelfond. Hi, Rick.
Hi, Rich. How you doing? It's been a few years since we talked. How are you? How's everything?
Well, generally good. I mean, today's not a great day, but other than that, things are going pretty well.
All right. Is it okay if I record this, or would you prefer I not, or do you have a preference?
I don't care unless I ask you to go off the record. Then I would ask that you shut it off at that point.
Absolutely. Okay, not a problem. Okay. Let's get started. Why is today such a bad day?
I mean, my stock is down, a significant amount, and it seems to have been triggered by this report, by this article. And, the article says that our business model is doomed to collapse because, you know, we don't have an unlimited market available forever. That's kind of the main thesis. I don't know. Have you seen the story, Rick?
The Seeking Alpha article?
Yeah, the Seeking Alpha article.
Yeah. I saw it. I found.
I mean, basically, just to get right into it, I mean, one of its issues is that IMAX could be a fad. IMAX has been in business for 43 years, so I kind of find it unusual to call a 43-year-old business a fad. We didn't climb out of a hole last week. We've been providing this experience for generations at this point now. The second point they make is that we have a finite market, not an infinite market. And I define that in a couple ways. First of all, lots of companies that are real successful, whether it's McDonald's or Starbucks or sort of any retail business, has a finite market, not an infinite market, right? You can't build an unlimited number. So I find that kind of curious that we don't have a future because we have a finite market. The second point would be that our finite market we've revised upward, on a very consistent basis going back over the last several years. And the reason for that is that, the markets change and our intelligence changes. So to give you an example, originally we thought China several years ago was a market that could support about 90 theaters. Now, just a few years later, we have 177 theaters in that market either open or in backlog, and we publicly revised our guidance to about 350 for China. We had thought Russia was about a 30-theater market, and we've already got, including our backlog, about 40 in Russia. So what our estimates are, they're a 3-year forward look at what we think the market is, and we constantly revise it. So another example would be this year we did I think it's 3 or 4, Ann could get back to you, it doesn't really matter, a multi-theater deal with premier theaters, and none of 4, Ann is telling me 4, and none of those theaters were in places we had previously described as a zone. So our zone analysis is a 3-year forward estimate of our market potential, and we constantly revise it upwards, and we're in the process of doing a study again, and we'll release the results of that in the fall. So again, the two-piece, finite market, and then I would add to that that by the time we get 5 years from now or 10 years from now, how do you define what a finite market is? So there could be 2 IMAXs in a multiplex. There could be, many IMAXs in a zone. I'm not even predicting that, Rick, and I don't want to predict that. But I'm saying, is iPhone going to be a product in 5 years, and what's its market, and what form is it going to take? You could go back in time and you could say, a company like Westinghouse, it looked like it would have a future forever. But in fact, over a 5-year period of time, technologies change, markets change. So, there may be reasons to own IMAX or not to own IMAX, but the reasons in this article about a finite world and being a fad are, just way out of left field, and I think don't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and I did get a chuckle out of comparing you guys to the Build-A-Bear Workshop and Jones Soda and Healy's, and they conveniently left out like a company like Crocs that everyone thought was a fad but bounced back big time now than it's been in the past, and conveniently cherry-picked stuff like that. Another thing I noticed in Larry's article that was a bit amusing was the whole argument about the smaller IMAX theaters. I mean, I've seen that LIMAX argument around, since 2008, 2009, and you guys had I think double the box office last year than you did in 2009. So I mean, it does seem to be a lot of these old arguments recycled. I think it's a lot. I mean, a lot of this obviously stems from what happened with Kung Fu Panda, which obviously hit DreamWorks and Real D a lot harder than it hit IMAX.
Well, mostly because we're not playing it domestically. So,
yeah.
I mean, you knew that, right? We're not.
Yeah. You guys were mostly showing pirates at that point. So yeah, I knew that. I don't know if anyone else was reporting it, but yeah.
And I guess one point that's a really important one I didn't make is a company, if it's well run, is organic and it adopts to change. And, I don't know what entertainment's going to be 10 years from now. And we've started looking at other growth businesses. So, we have our 3D TV channel with Sony and Discovery. We introduced our portable theater. I really don't think over the next 10 years, we're going to sit on our hands and sit around and say, oh, my, the market's getting smaller. I mean, I think we have a huge runway. And in fact, I'd go almost the other way and say we have something like 285 theaters in backlog. So we have more visibility into our growth than most businesses just because it's in backlog and it's contractually, set in. So,
hey, Rich.
Yeah.
One other point. This is Whit, by the way, Rick. But one other point, and I think it's missed in the Seeking Alpha thing, is the approach that IMAX has taken with joint ventures and revenue sharing, which historically had not been something the company did, but has done and has provided sort of a more consistent view of what revenue opportunities are for the company. Sort of missed that point in his piece.
Yeah, I think he referred only to revenue sharing, only to the remastering part, and not the fact that you guys are getting a cut of even of some of the concession stands at some of these theaters, right?
Right, exactly. Whit's raising a really good point that he says it makes it sound like, again, this is a model that existed years ago. We're not, in the one-time revenue business. We're in the recurring revenue business, and even where we sell theaters and it's not structured as a joint venture, we still get our share of the box office from the studio. So every theater is a recurring revenue theater, and he completely doesn't understand that point.
Great. Thank you. Anything else you want to add, Rich, or anything that...
He calls IMAX a gimmick, and it's a pretty good one, I guess, if it's worked for 43 years.
Right. Hey, Rich.
Yes.
Another point, and this, this speaks to this guy's fundamental lack of understanding, but, as you would have seen last week, the company, obviously did another refinancing of its credit line at reduced interest rates, and, that reflects a view from both banks and other financial institutions in the sort of opportunities that exist for IMAX to grow the network.
Yeah, the interest rate was LIBOR plus 2%, by the way, and it was Wells Fargo was the lender. That's a good point.
Right, so every passing quarter you seem to be less and less of a credit risk to these companies that should know, so...
Yes, and which is a good point. And also, it was ironic, this came out yesterday, which was the same day that Paramount announced that Super 8 was going to open a day early in IMAX theaters. So I don't know if you remember this, Rick. I'm sure you wrote about it at the time. But before Avatar became a huge success, One Way Fox promoted it, was doing an exclusive IMAX release to show some of the footage. And The Dark Knight, Chris Nolan, which used IMAX cameras, was previewed over Christmas before its summer release as a trailer to IMAX Films. So IMAX is clearly a valuable marketing tool. So yesterday, Paramount announced that it's opening Super 8 today in 300 theaters, of which 240 are IMAX. So, I don't think the Hollywood community particularly sees it this way.
Yeah. Is there anything to talk about the 3D channel that you guys were doing with Discovery and Sony? Any kind of news on that, or?
I think it's really too soon to tell. I mean,
they do have distribution agreements with DirecTV, and they're making progress in that marketplace. So I think that would be an important point.
Right.
DirecTV being the second largest, if not the first largest, multi-channel video provider.
Right, but I guess the big story here is, this writer who has, a misunderstanding of your model and of your upside and pretty much everything else that he thinks you guys are, Jones Soda of all things.
Yeah, and as I said, the timing was, really strange, given that I think it's another important milestone for us to be releasing a film earlier in IMAX than the rest of the theatrical window.
Definitely, and the movie looks pretty good, so let's see how it goes this weekend.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Are you going? Have you seen the whole thing or no?
No, I haven't seen it yet, but yeah, I mean, I'll see anything Spielberg, definitely at least once.
Are you in New York?
No, I'm in Miami, Florida.
Oh, I would have offered you tonight's the IMAX premiere. I would have invited.
Oh, I would have loved to have flown up for it, but no, I'm glued here to Miami.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Rich.
Take care.
All right, thanks, Rick.
Thanks.